Richard Morgan is probably best known through the TV series Altered Carbon, which is based on his 3 books featuring the anti-hero Takeshi Kovacs. It's one of my favourite science fiction series. I've read the books as well, but to my mind the TV version is better than the printed word. Some SF, like Altered Carbon, seems to be taken to another level through film and television adaptation. But I'm not here to talk about science fiction. I'm here to talk about a dark fantasy trilogy Richard Morgan wrote, known as A Land Fit for Heroes. I often say that the first few pages of a novel are what decide me on whether to read on. When I opened the first book in the series, I was hooked from the start. The first book, The Still Remains, follows the intertwined fates of 3 very different people. Ringill, the hero of the bloody slaughter at Gallows Gap, is a legend to all who don't know him, and a twisted, degenerate homosexual to those that do. Then there is Kireth, the last of a race, and also one who's attracted to her own sex. And lastly, Egar Dragonbane, a step warrior who is staunchly heterosexual. Richard Morgan has a talent for fleshing out his protagonists through the conversations they have with their lovers, friends and enemies, which include descriptive and often brutal backstories and gory action. It makes it easier to root for them when the going gets tough. One of the reasons I like his writing so much is that he avoids the modern trend of peopling his stories with too many main characters. Some of the most successful authors writing today include at least 6 main characters in their books. I have a feeling that this is connected to the ever-expanding diversity of people who now read fantasy. I tend to lose track of who's who in these often doorstep-sized volumes. There are writers who can get away with it. Tolkien introduces his main characters in The Lord of the Rings slowly enough for me to get my head around them. Stephen Donaldson does the same with the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, and George R.R. Martin manages it with his series A Song of Ice and Fire, which was made into the TV series A Game of Thrones. My suspicion that a plethora of main characters and subplots is aimed at an ever-diverse readership was strengthened when I did a straw poll of fans of A Song of Ice and Fire. I asked each person who was their favourite character. The answers varied, but the replies were instant and very clear. Women readers tended to identify with Arya Stark, Cersei Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen and Brienne of Tarth. Arya Stark was also high on the list of favourites for male readers. Others included Samwell Tarly, the mercenary Bronn and the Hound Clegane. The age of the reader and their sex also had a bearing on who they enjoyed reading about the most. But I digress. Back to Richard Morgan's trilogy, A Land Fit for Heroes. In the first book, The Still Remains, our 3 main characters are called upon by an empire that owes them everything and gave them nothing to serve once again. They're drawn together by the discovery that an ancient and malevolent people known as the Dwender, who were thought to have been defeated centuries ago, have returned. As they investigate, they uncover a conspiracy that threatens to plunge the Empire into a devastating war. The first of these books was written nearly 20 years ago, long before it was popular to include protagonists from the LGBTQ community as heroes and anti-heroes. While there is a fashion to include LGBTQ in fantasy nowadays, Morgan was doing this before most, and I don't think he did it to attract readers as many writers do today. And he does something else I admire. Too many fantasies concentrate on giving preference to detailed descriptions of acts of violence and avoid giving equal weight to descriptions of sex. Morgan at least tries to give sex and violence equal billing. And as 2 of the main protagonists are gay, this makes the novels stand out. This is grim and bloody fantasy at its very best. It is not for the faint-hearted. If you're still trapped in the world of Twilight or avid readers of romantasy rather than followers of Grimdark, then you are not ready for Richard Morgan's trilogy, A Land Fit for Heroes. Well, that's all for this episode. If you like these podcasts and find them useful, please follow or subscribe and share them with your friends. If you want to help with the cost of making them, you can buy me a coffee. Links to all the books I recommend can be found below.